Well, it's time for another segment of Campaign Catch-Up. And, of course, as always, there seems to be a new monumental turn each time we have one of these in just 1 week span. It's only it's a weekly segment, but every time we feel like we have 2 years worth of news in 1 week. And joining me today is CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody and Nathan Gonzales of Inside Election. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. David, let's start with you. Obviously, we had the breaking news over the weekend. The dust is not settled, but beginning to settle, at least a little. What's the latest here? What are you hearing? Where are we at?
Well, the latest can just change within 30 seconds. So why don't we start with that caveat?
Yeah.
And also, let me just start on a medical issue, so to speak. I'm up from 4 ounces of Pepto-Bismol a day to 8 ounces. So I've in essence, doubled my intake. Well, look, this is going to be a drip scenario as it relates to the Kamala train. And indeed, we saw more dripping today with Nancy Pelosi, obviously being the one now to endorse her, as well as, of course, the Clintons and, of course, Biden and all of the DNC or the Democrat state chairmen, all 50 of them. So we're just waiting for Barack Obama, the last shoe to drop, if you will. I mean, I'm not sure if we heard from Chuck Schumer. Maybe Nathan can tell me. I'm sorry, my head's still spinning. I don't know. I can't keep up. But we do know the House Whip, not Hakeem Jeffries, but the House Whip, Catherine Clark, has gone ahead and endorsed Kamala. So, look, this idea that there's going to be any sort of contested convention, not going to happen. Gretchen Whitmer is out there. She's now endorsed Kamala, Gavin Newsom, and down the list. So that's it. It really is now looking at who is her VP choice going to be, and it's an important one, a very important one for her specifically, because she's got to somehow get her approval numbers up. And obviously win Milwaukee, listen to me, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And those are obviously the 3 big ones. But let's be clear, and Nathan can talk more about this. Even if she wins all 3, you can't lose Arizona and Georgia. I mean, you got to kind of win one of those. And if you don't, then you got to look elsewhere, because you're going to probably lose Nevada. So we can get into all of that. But the bottom line is that this is it's time for Kamala now, and it's Kamala Trump. And we can talk about all the contours of that. But Team Trump, so to speak, is ready. They kind of knew this would be coming. And they've got a 3-pronged strategy, which we can get into here at some point. Yeah,
Nathan, obviously the momentum seems to be with Kamala here. Is that an all but a foregone conclusion in your mind? How do you see things? And what are the most interesting things left to find out here for you at this point?
Yeah, well, she's going to be the nominee, and David's right about that. I think that we have to if we zoom out, we have to remember that former President Trump had the advantage in this race, and I think he still has the advantage in this race until proven otherwise. That being said, I think this is a game-changing moment. Republicans are certainly going to go after the vice president for the president's record and the administration's record on the economy, on the border, anything that has to do with the administration. But this has changed the dynamic in a couple different ways. Now, for voters who say, well, I don't want to have to choose between 2 old guys, Democrats are offering an alternative. For someone who says, well, I don't want to, I don't like how we just have the same 2 guys that we had last time, Democrats are offering an alternative. We're not talking as much about Biden's age and his ability to perform as a candidate, because Harris changes that conversation. And so it might look a little bit the same because it's someone from the administration, but the contours of this race are a little bit different. It's energizing the Democratic Party. An energized party does not guarantee election. That's one critical piece. Now the question is, what do independent voters do? And are they intrigued by Harris being a different candidate than Biden? Or are they still so upset with the administration and the status quo and where their lives are now that they're going to hold her responsible? I think that's a big unanswered question. And I agree that the vice presidential choice is going to get a lot of attention. It's boiling down to probably 3 or 4 people right now in the conversation. But things are happening very quickly, as David laid out.
Well, and they have to, David, because there's only 100 days left. So go ahead with what you're going to say. But my question was going to be just, okay, now it's crunch time here. You're barely over 3 months, or essentially what it is. So how does that factor into all this? What is the Democrats' focus here on? What do they highlight in this short amount of time? Do they try to just keep it like a feeling, like historical first female president, that sort of thing? What do you see happening there?
First of all, they got the first step of this right, which is to coalesce and unify quickly. This could have gone off the rails real quick, and it didn't. And so they're off to a, quote, good start, whatever that means at this point in politics. Number one, a couple of things as to what Nathan was saying. Totally agree with all of that. Kamala Harris has a couple advantages here going in. One, the energy, right? Nathan talked about that. 82 years old and the mental acuity issues versus a 59-year-old person who has quite a bit of energy. That's number one. Number two, you have a media that's going to talk about a lot about history potentially in the making with the first Black female president. That will help that campaign. And then, of course, we haven't even gotten to the third and maybe the most important of all, the abortion issue, which Kamala is not only good at, but we know, as Nathan has pointed out countless times on Faith Nation and otherwise, the abortion issue obviously helps Democrats. So you have all those three. Also, remember, Kamala is going to have an interesting situation here because she's a former prosecutor, which means she's very good at the granular. She's very good at prosecuting a certain issue. Her issue, so to speak, has been when she gets more broader and the vision issue, kind of talking about America and her vision for the country. I think that's where she kind of goes word salad a little bit, and that's going to be a challenge for her. Another challenge for her, obviously, is she's going to be tied to Biden's record, so she doesn't want to diss Biden's record. At the same time, she wants to be her own candidate. So she's going to have to kind of finagle the middle, and I don't mean politically the middle moderate, but I mean she's going to have to kind of play both sides a little bit to kind of be her own candidate, but embrace Biden's policy. She can't disown any of that. She has to own it. She has to figure out a way to own it. And one last thing I'll say is that one possible advantage for Kamala, maybe many people aren't talking about, it has to do with Trump, which is that Trump loves to be in the role of the disruptor. I mean, that's his bread and butter. In this case, he's not the disruptor. Democrats are, and of course, it has led to a bunch of disarray. But the point is, Democrats are kind of flipping the script on Trump rather than Trump flipping the script on others. And that's not a position Donald Trump likes to be in. I think he sees it as kind of a weak position to be in. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with this specifically.
Yeah, Nathan, we mentioned it before. David and I and John Stolnis talked about it yesterday about the possible VP picks here. So I know David's thrown out a few names. What are you thinking? What are you hearing about a possible VP pick if indeed Harris ends up being the nominee?
Yeah, well, the conversation is surrounding four people, it looks like right now, three governors and a senator. The governors, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina. All three of these governors were former attorneys general, as was Vice President Harris. And so they have that in common. But Roy Cooper, North Carolina, he's the oldest of the people being mentioned, might bring, and he represents a southern state as governor. So he could bring that to the table. Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. He won a big race in 2022. Pennsylvania, as David mentioned, is a very critical state. It's part of that that blue wall that's often talked about that the now Harris ticket likely needs to win in order to get elected. And then Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky. Not a battleground state, but a younger Southern Democrat who could balance out maybe the California liberal tie or label that's going to get attached to Vice President Harris. I think probably though those are relatively safe picks. I think if the Harris team was really gunning for the win, I think Arizona Senator Mark Kelly is the pick. He is a former Navy pilot, astronaut, now U.S. Senator. He's married to Gabby Giffords, who was shot in 2011 outside of a grocery store when she was doing a constituent services event. He's one of the Democrats' best fundraisers in the party. I think he has a lot to offer, and I think he would force people outside of Arizona, where he represents, I think, to take a second look, right? I mean, if it's Roy Cooper or something, I'm not sure that people really pay that much attention. But if it's an astronaut, a military pilot who's married to Gabby Giffords, I think they're like, oh, okay, I'll listen. Yeah. I'll listen. And I think that he has the most upside for Harris.
I have 3 words of analysis. What he said, those are my 3 words. 100%. I mean, Nathan's spot on. And as a matter of fact, I even said on the 700 Club this morning that I thought it would be Mark Kelly. I think that seems to be the pick that could maybe get you somewhere. And once again, Arizona's a state up for grabs. But beyond all of that, and Nathan went through the resume, and that's a big deal, by the way. Former astronaut, United Navy captain, and U.S. Senator, all of that, and the Gabby Giffords situation as well. Having said all that, he's also very good at retail politicking. I mean, he's 60 years old. He's a guy from New Jersey originally. He's got some charisma, but it's authentic charisma. He's a guy that typically will eat at the local Mexican restaurant and not go to the foo-foo places. I mean, he's that type of guy, and I think that could definitely work for sure. I would say this, if I had a number 2 pick, if you will, in terms of who I think it might be, I know a lot of people say Shapiro. I get that because it's Pennsylvania. That makes sense, like on paper, PDF document. I get that. But I think Andy Bashir is really an interesting pick here. He kind of brings you, he helps you a little bit blunt the J.D. Vance hillbilly elegy to a degree, that kind of hillbilly justice as we've heard about. But beyond that, look, I mean, Kentucky, a conservative state, and this is a 2-time Democrat governor. In a place like Kentucky, I think you can make the narrative. You can talk that Rust Belt language. You can talk that blue collar, middle class language as well. So I think that would be actually something very intriguing as well. I think either one of those work. The other 2 probably second tier. Even though I get the Pennsylvania thing, but I think that might be too myopic of a view. I think it might have to be larger.
And Dan, the concern about Kelly is that he's in the United States Senate, which is very evenly divided right now. And so if he's the VP and he wins, then there is a Democratic governor who would appoint a senator, presumably another Democrat. But then there would be a special election in 2026 to fill the remainder of the term because Kelly was just reelected in 2022. So there's concern. Democrats are like, well, we can't afford to give up any Senate seats. But I feel like you got to win the race that's in front of you. You got to focus on now. Who knows where we're going to be as a country or where Congress is going to be in 2026? I mean, the way things are happening now, that is eons away. And so I think Democrats you got to win the race that's ahead of you.
Let me just quickly add to that. Part of the problem could be Mark Kelly. I mean, does he really want to do this? I mean, at this point with the terrain in front of them, yeah, she's got a chance at winning, maybe a puncher's chance or better. But, I mean, this is teeing up pretty well for Trump, and it has been for a while. And Nathan, as you know, those polls, typically, they're pretty solid. And if they've been solid for a while, you wonder how much of the contours of the race could change. Now, we have a game changer in the sense that we have a new candidate. I get that. But I'm just wondering if Mark Kelly wants to risk it all for a few months on the campaign trail with Kamala Harris and lose a Senate seat. It's the same thing that goes for Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom and all those other folks. Keep your powder dry and play for 2028 rather than trying to get in the race now and possibly lose to Trump or even in a landslide to Trump.
Yeah. And Nathan, I'm interested to get your take here on some of the things that maybe aren't so obvious about this late switch. For example, you've got Joe Biden's name on all of these ballots across the country in these different states. What are the sorts of things that Democrats, these hurdles that they have, all the kind of rank and file, like sort of checklist things that maybe people aren't focusing on but are a big deal?
Well, it's my understanding that he actually isn't on the ballot. He's not the official nominee yet. That's what the convention is for, is to name the official nominee, and the ballot deadlines, particularly now that Ohio changed theirs, that was the one that was that was in question, but there's still time for this to happen. They're mechanically, again, the convention hasn't taken place, so he wasn't the official nominee. That would have been doing all of this after the convention in the official nominating process would have been just a mess and arguably impossible. But this, I would say there's technically still time, but this needed to get worked out sooner rather than later. Democrats couldn't drag this out, I would say, politically all the way to almost the end of August in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, now we look at the Republican side of this thing. How are they going to attack? I mean, we've already kind of seen some tweets, I guess, on Truth Social, whatever that you call those over there, those posts from Trump. What do you think the biggest lines of attack here are going to be, David?
Well, they're going to obviously try to tie Kamala Harris to Biden's record, and they can easily do that because they are married at the hip, if you will. I mean, that's easy. She is the border czar, after all, and of course, immigration polling right up there with the economy. So they're going to go after that. They're also going to go after this idea of, what did you know and when did you know it, regarding Joe Biden's mental acuity. I mean, they're going to play clip after clip. As a matter of fact, there's already an ad up in, believe it's Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona, already up on television stations there about, well, wait a minute. You said he was just fine, sharpest guy in the room, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing, but the point is that we know that wasn't the case. I mean, we have now story after story from Democrats themselves, White House aides, saying that they knew for years, for a couple of years, at least all the way back to 2021. You can make the argument it went further than that, but from the White House aides, we're now getting reports that they knew back in 2021 that there was a problem. So if she knew and she was hiding that, she'll have to answer for that. Not to mention, they'll try to extrapolate that and say, well, if you were hiding that, what else are you hiding? And I think that will be a second line of attack. And then, finally, I would just say that they're going to make the democracy argument. They're going to say, they're just backroom deals in Chicago, or the oligarchs of the Democrat Party are trying to get Kamala in there, and they're not giving a say to the people. I mean, come on. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, I think that's hogwash. I mean, the truth of the matter is, it is, after all, last time I checked, Biden-Harris. I mean, it's not like this is Gretchen Whitmer trying to come in and sandbag Kamala Harris. That might be different. Or Gavin Newsom. Or, Donna Brazile and everybody at the DNC saying, hey, we've got our candidate here, or we have Michelle Obama in the wings. And of course, we know Michelle Obama is not going to do it. I mean, it's not a situation like that at all. This seems to be a natural progression. And the delegates voted for, they voted for Biden, but let's be honest, by extension, they voted for a Biden-Harris ticket. So this idea that this is that Democrats are playing with democracy here and they're doing backroom deals, I don't buy it. I think it's obviously it's disingenuous, and I don't think it goes anywhere.
Yeah, thank you, David, for saying that, because we are hearing Republicans use the word coup, and coup is an illegal, violent overtake of government. This is not illegal, and this is not violent. And so the comparisons to anything like that are ridiculous. I'll agree. I will add that I agree that Harris is going to have to. She is going to be held responsible for the administration's record. That's a part of the conversation. I think, though, that Democrats would rather be having that discussion rather than, is Biden old, or is he too old, right? That's what the whole conversation was after the debate, was only about Biden's age. And one way that I think the current president could maybe help that conversation about what did Harris or what did other Democrats know is do the job. I mean, when he clears COVID, come out, do the job of president, and show that there can be a difference between doing the job as president and being a candidate, and the physical requirements of campaigning and getting around the state. Those are different, I think, than doing the job of president. And so if Biden emerges from COVID and can show he can do the job, I think that takes a little bit of the edge off of that particular argument.
I do want to just can I quickly add something on the democracy issue? I think it would probably be prudent, though, for the Democrats to have somewhat of an open process at the convention and however they want to do it. I mean, that's going to be obviously up to the DNC and the Rules Committee and everything else. But how the public sees this play out, I think the optics are important. So in other words, number one, it would help blunt any sort of Republican attack. But beyond all of that, I just think it's the right thing to do. I mean, you have a very unusual situation. And I think if you had, for example, delegate meetings open to the not up to the public, but open to the cameras, and you let people in to kind of see the process play out and see democracy at work, if you will, I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that's what they should think about doing. So, I mean, I don't have all of the granular details of how it would work, but they do. And I figure there's got to be a way to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like we talked about in the initial statement, that they didn't really give an exact reason as to why Biden was stepping down. And I think Democrats are almost caught between a rock and a hard place on which excuse they pick, because if they say he's too old and that he's not able to do the job any farther, and he just, wasn't going to be able to do it, well, then what's he doing in there right now? Now you got to face that question, right? But then if you say he couldn't win, it does kind of say, maybe they're following the rules here, but you're not supposed to be able to just say as a party, like, you know what, the polls aren't looking too good. I know you voted for that guy, but we're gonna go ahead and force him out of here. So neither one of these explanations sound particularly appealing. And I know, and he's going to have to give one at some point this week. And I know Vivek Ramaswamy said, you know, we're not fighting a candidate here, we're fighting a system. So maybe the threat to democracy, exact phrasing of that doesn't work. But I do think a lot of people may view this as the party just sort of taking matters into their own hands. Do you think there are any legs to that or not? Nathan, you want to tackle that?
I think a challenge for that is that Republicans haven't exactly shown themselves to be the objective arbiters of our election results, or abiding by all our elections. And I know that certainly not every Republican or Trump supporter was inside the Capitol on January 6th, but I think that damaged some of the credibility on the democracy argument. And I just think we're going to have multiple news events, the VP pick and other things that are going to happen. And some of this is going to fade away, and it's going to, come down to those basics of the Biden-Harris administration and who the VP is and Trump's record and Trump's abilities. And I think it's going to boil down to some of the basics.
Well, I think the democracy argument that they're making about the weaponization of government, what Republicans are saying about the weaponization, I think that's pretty effective. I think that plays well to a certain folks out there, and quite frankly, it's not just MAGA. I think you can, and I don't want to call them independents, but I think people that are just kind of like common sense folks that just kind of see it from a distance. I think that works. Now, in terms of what you said, Dan, earlier, let me just be very clear. Biden is going to have to, whenever we see him, which, by the way, can we just admit is a bit strange? I mean, why in the world have we not seen him on the most consequential decision in like decades?
It is weird,
if not long. It just feels weird. And you know what that means, of course, is we all kind of smile, but it's leading to rumors. It's leading to stuff that's out there on the internet that I won't repeat here.
You're right, David. I just want to say that the man just announced he's not running for president, and he did it on a social media post. Like that's not something you just kind of tweet out like, oh, by the way, everyone. Like, I mean, that would be like, I'm going to the podium and I'm going to make this dramatic, right? Like, it's just so odd that it was just tweeted out.
If he has COVID and he's hacking up a lung, is that really the statement he wants to make? I guess, there was time after the debate, Trump went away for 10 days. We didn't hear from Trump for 10 days. When Trump was president, he was at Walter Reed for 3.5 days with COVID, and we had no idea his health. So I don't know. Yes, it can lead to rumors, but it doesn't mean anything nefarious is going on, except for he's got COVID.
Okay, but from a factual standpoint, he's only released a schedule through Monday or through, I believe, maybe Tuesday at the very latest. So, and we don't know exactly what the rest of the week holds for him. That is not. I mean, I've covered the White House for 2 years. That is very unusual for a sitting president not to release their weekly schedule on a Sunday night. And now it could be because he continues to have COVID and we don't know. But at least say that in terms of. They're not getting ahead of it. They need to kind of figure this out and explain it, because we live in a day and age here where things just get out of control real fast, and you can mitigate the damage if you can just get out of it. But they've bungled this thing. Honestly, they really have. The White House has bungled this from day one. But real quick, back to the answer to your question at the beginning, which is that Biden has got to say something whenever we see him. He's got to say something about, if not mental acuity, he's got to say age. He's got to say something about the elephant in the room, or in this case, the donkey in the room. But he's got to say something because once again, as I've said many times, there's been a gaslighting that's been going on. I mean, even this is not that was my analysis a year ago, but now that you have Democrats saying that the White House was gaslighting them. So the jig is up. So come out and say, I've got some memory issues. Say it however you want. Put some nice flowers around it. But say that, talk about the age, and then move on. Because honestly, if he doesn't do that, then they're not being truthful. And here's the other thing, to your point, Dan, if he does say that, then it's going to lead to, well, what in the world are you doing still in office until January? Which is why he doesn't want to say that. But if he doesn't say it, they're going to be lying to the American people, because we know what we saw We know what we saw. That's the reason his poll numbers are down, because of the debate. I mean, it doesn't take a. Am I missing something, Nathan? Help me. Am I missing something here? I don't know.
I don't think when the president emerges, I think his answer is going to be insufficient for a lot of people. I think we'll probably hear something about passing the torch, a time for the next generation. It's going to be pretty vague. He's not going to.
Yeah.
I think it's not going to satisfy a lot of folks, and we'll see if that ends up mattering, right? Let's see if the president, if that is sufficient, and the right type of voters move on. For some voters, right, they're going to hate it, and they were never going to vote for Biden, they were never going to vote for Harris. But what about for voters that are a little more persuadable, and is that a sufficient answer? And I think that's a huge unknown question.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I mean, and those are the voters that typically are going to swing this election one way or the other. Nathan Gonzales of Inside Elections, CBN's David Brody. Gentlemen, thank you so much for breaking it down. I wait with fear and trembling at what we'll be talking about next week at this time, because it's gotten progressively more wild each and every week that we've been going by. But I appreciate your time, guys, breaking it down today.
Always fun.
Thanks so much. I sleep in a suit now, Dan. I sleep in a suit.